Good morning. You call the meeting to order and welcome to the 12th electronic meeting of Oxford County Council. In order to ensure the meeting runs as smoothly as possible, I'd like to remind council and staff and delegates of a few housekeeping items. In order to minimize background noise, I ask you mute your microphones unless you are speaking to an item. This will also ensure that the camera doesn't zoom in on anyone unintentionally. And as a courtesy to those watching or listening from home, please introduce yourself prior to speaking to an item. In order to ensure quorum is maintained at all times, I ask that council advise if they are leaving the meeting. In the event of technical difficulties, the meeting will be temporarily stopped to deal with the issue. And this agenda contains one closed session report, and live streaming will cease during that period and will restart following the closed session. And with that, I will ask the clerk to do a roll call and take attendance.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Molnar.
Morning.
Councillor Birch.
Here.
Councillor Komisky.
Good morning, everyone.
Councillor Mayberry.
He's here.
I'm here.
There he goes.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Present.
Councillor Peterson.
Present.
Councillor Ryan.
Present.
Councillor Tate.
Here.
Councillor Talbot.
Present.
On to staff. Michael Dubin.
Morning, everyone.
Ben Adley.
Present.
Paul Beaton.
Present.
Lynn Bugner.
Present.
Mark Dagger.
Present.
Gord Huff.
Present.
David Simpson.
Present.
Amy Smith.
Present.
Everyone.
Okay. So we'll now have a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Talbot.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Birch, resolved that the agenda be approved.
Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we will move on then to adoption of the council minutes, and again, Councillor Talbot.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Birch, resolved that the council minutes of the October 28th, 2020 be adopted.
You've heard the motion. Are there any errors or omission or any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. We need we need a motion to resolution to go into the public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, and I believe Councillor Talbot, you have that one as well.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Birch, resolved that council rise and go into a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, and that the warden chair the public meeting.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. This now brings us to a public meeting portion of the agenda, of which there are three. Due to the nature of a virtual meeting, the public has been asked to submit or request to speak in advance. Only those who have registered will join the meeting. When recognized by the chair to speak, you must provide your name and address for the public record before giving comments. With regards to planning matters, only the applicant or people who provides oral or written comments regarding the application are entitled to appeal council's decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's office, and this notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. So we have a motion, we have an application for a plan draft of subdivision in Mount Elgin. And what we will do with that is the planner will give his report, and then there will be questions of council for the planner on his report for points of clarification. And then we will ask the applicant or their representative if they have any presentation or comments that they would care to make at that point in time. After that point in time, I should say, the There will be questions of council for them as well. And after that, then we will go to the public to see if there are any questions or comments or concerns that they would wish to express at that point in time. So with that, then, Gord, I will turn the floor over to you to give you a report.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just sharing some documents here with you now. And our first application that for public meeting today is for a plan of subdivision in the village of Mount Elgin in southwest Oxford. The applicant here is proposing to develop a 61 lot plan of subdivision in the southerly portion of the village. The lands are designated for low density residential use. The plan as presented meets with the official plan policies with respect to density provisions for this development. And what it does, you'll see from earlier mapping here that this subdivision plan is an extension of the existing road network in the village, but it also provides, importantly, provides a much needed second access into these lands from Highway 19, as you can see from the plan here. The design itself is pretty straightforward. You see that the township has incorporated or is approved or supporting of a roundabout as a means of traffic calming inside of the subdivision plan. Generally speaking, all of the issues and requirements of the township and county through the circulation of the application have been met. There are the applicant continues to work with the Ministry of Transportation on the requirements for the road access, street access at the county road. There are a number of conditions contained in the conditions of draft approval that will assist in addressing that. But we're satisfied that the matters have moved along sufficiently to this point that the subdivision can be given draft approval, sufficient conditions again to ensure that the ministry's concerns are addressed prior to registration. The lands have sufficient capacity for development. I would also point out that the county is bringing an additional water supply on in Mount Elgin that is expected to be on stream in about mid-2021. Again, conditions included in the draft plan to ensure that that does not occur. Registration doesn't occur until that water supply is in place. So those are my comments, Mr. Warden, and I will turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council with regards to the planning report? Please just state your name and your question if you will. Seeing no hands raised, so then that will bring us down. Is Mr. Ken Briggs, Engineering Plus consultant for the engineers, are you available to speak at this point in time? And Mr. Brian Graydon, I guess the registered speak regarding the application as well. So you're both with the plan of subdivision, I take it?
Yes, we are.
So then I will, is there anything that you would like to add to the planning report at this point in time?
No, I think Mr. Huff has covered this very well. Mr. Graydon's got a proven track record of doing excellent developments in the area. He's well known by all of the municipal staff, and he has a proven track record. And I think this will be a nice addition to the township.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graydon. Do you have any comments?
No, I have nothing really to add to that, Mr. Warden. It's something that we've been working on for some time in cooperation with the municipality, both the township and county planning. So we look forward to being able to move forward with this as soon as we are able to finish up with the MTO, which we've been in negotiations with them for more than a year and a half now. But feel very confident that we have an agreement and we'll be able to move forward with this.
Thank you very much. Then, are there any of the members of council have questions for the applicants? Deputy Warden Molnar.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Warden. Through to either Mr. Graydon or his associate. Really just as we would have this time looking for confirmation that you and your team are confirm all the terms of the agreement. I guess I'm especially referencing the phasing of the development relative to the current and future capacity of water on that site.
Yes, we're aware of the phasing and the current number of houses that are able to be designated for each phase. And we'd be able to adhere to that. When certainly look forward to the new well supply, the new water supply coming on stream for Mount Elgin in mid 2021, as was referenced by Planner Huff earlier.
Any
Thank
further?
you.
Oh, that's Councillor Mayberry.
Just a couple of quick comments. First of all, in the agreement, I think it says Union Gas, and it probably should say Enbridge in a couple of spots. I believe that's some probably carryover from previous subdivision agreements. The second thing I would comment is the township acknowledges and understands some of the concerns of some of the local residents because of the truck traffic on Peggy Ave, which is the only access to the phase 4, which is a current phase that Mr. Graydon's been working on. And hence we are as supportive as anyone on trying to get access to 19 as quickly as possible. And very much appreciate the developer's patience with MTO in trying to work through that. That's as far as the township's concerned, that's absolutely essential to have that connection to the highway so that there's another access to the subdivision. So we too would like to see the construction all happen off the new access, but for the development that's happening right at the moment, there is only one access, and I honestly think the developer are doing a good job at trying to keep it as clean and respectful as they can in what is honestly a difficult situation. So we want to acknowledge that, and we are working towards it with Mr. Graydon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Mayberry. Are there any questions or comments, any other members? Seeing none, then we will move down to our next application, and it's by Millgate Homes. And a similar process for this one is the planner will give his report. There will be questions of members of council. Then the applicant or his representative will be able to make comment if he wishes. And there'll be, again, questions from council. And after that, we have, I guess, there are nobody registered other than the groups that are working on the project. So they will all be able to. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a Dave Nargang is registered to speak with regarding this application. My apologies. I overlooked that name. So that's one application. So they will open the floor up to them to comment after the others. So then at this point in time, I will turn the floor over once again to Mr. Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just for the viewers at home, my name is Gord Huff. I'm the Director of Community Planning here at the County of Oxford. This is an application for a plan of subdivision and an official plan amendment in the village of Tavistock, in East Sword, Tavistock, toward the south end of the village. The applicants are proposing to designate a portion of the lands currently designated for industrial use, as you see here, to various residential designations to accommodate the development. The development consists of 147 lots for single detached dwellings, another number of blocks for 45 townhouse units, and includes access points to William Street, and will take advantage of extending the streets upward northerly into the existing village. This is an area of the village that you'll see back to a map here that shows the Tavistock waste treatment sewers lagoons, which these lands are separated from sufficiently, but part of the designation that of the industrial lands, a portion of those lands are remaining industrial. Some of the rationale around the industrial redesignation is that these lands are in an area that is difficult to access, surrounded by sensitive uses, those being the residential development that's being proposed here, as well as the elementary school to the immediate north. And the township is actually embarking in 2021 on a bit of a secondary planning exercise for the township, in which we will be able to look at better locations for those industrial lands. So for the purposes of this plan, we felt it was appropriate to redesignate the property from a provincial policy perspective. These lands are not identified as a primary industrial area, and the redesignation for residential use would seem to lend itself in the circumstances. Again, with respect to the development design of the actual development, you'll see that the road network is fairly standard. The applicant is actually, through discussions with the township, agreed to, at the southerly end of the property here, another access that would come in from William Street to assist in directing some of that traffic from this development onto William Street and hopefully to the south for people who may not be heading north through the village. The designations that are being proposed in here, there's a number of changes that are basically swapping around some medium and low density residential designations to facilitate, as I indicated earlier, the single detached and townhouse developments that are proposed for this site. Overall, planning staff are satisfied that the lands meets the official plan policies with respect to the density of the development as contained in our official plan. And we're satisfied together with the township and the comments we've received from both the township and the county on the access points on the road design that the application could be looked at favorably. So those are my comments. Mr. Warden would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Are there any questions from any of the member of council for Mr. Huff? I see no hands. So then we have Mr. Chris Pigeon from GSP Group registered to speak to this application. And do you have anything that you would like to add, Mr. Pigeon, as far as the application itself?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Warden and members of council. I have a very brief presentation. If I can, I'll just share my screen and then I'll close it as soon as I'm completed the presentation. You see that, Mr. Warden?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Chris Pigeon representing Millgate Homes, Inc. They are the applicant. Their primary company is Gateman Malloy out of Kitchener, so they're a development company. In addition, on our project team, so we had transportation, servicing, stormwater management engineers, geotech, so soils engineers, and then finally detritus consulting archaeological assessment. You've seen the site. I think the key to this slide is that there is frontage on Mariah, Adam, and William Streets. This was the original plan of subdivision that was submitted in July, and you can see that there are 2 points of access that were contemplated. One was the Wettlaufer Street extension at William, and then the other was the Mariah Street extension. As a result of discussions, as Mr. Huff has indicated, as a result of discussions with the township and the county, we've worked collaboratively to come up with this third access point. And the hope is that it would avoid and redirect traffic away from the 5-point intersection in central Tavistock. So the idea is that the traffic would then go down William and then take advantage of Maplewood Side Road, which I think was just recently reconstructed for commuters that may live in this subdivision going to either the west or the east to Woodstock or Kitchener-Waterloo. In addition then, as a part of that, the access to the lagoon would be closed. There's a culvert that's located over the Horner Drain, and that culvert has a backwater effect from a floodplain perspective. So we would be taking that culvert out and creating a new electronic gated access to the lagoons as a part of the subdivision process in collaboration with the county. So essentially, this where the X's are, this is the existing lagoon access. So it's a gated access to the lagoons. We would create a new access, removing that culvert, and have a new culvert constructed, and the access would remain a gated access to the lagoons in this location. So it allows has the advantage of eliminating that backwater effect that we're having in terms of the broader floodplain in Tavistock. And the county would still have the control of that lagoon access through that electronic gate, and that'll be dealt with through a part of the detailed engineering design for the plan of subdivision. So these are the technical studies that were completed. I just wanted to quickly highlight the traffic impact study. So this looked at existing traffic volumes at the time of writing the report in 2019, and then it projected the background traffic for 5 years and 10 years out. So to 2023 and then to 2028, plus the traffic that's generated by the overall subdivision. The traffic study looked at these 7 intersections to ensure that the functionality of those intersections would remain at acceptable levels. So it looks at the stop signals, turn lanes, for example, and it was concluded that all of the intersections would function at acceptable levels in the peak hours. The subdivision overall will add between 215 and 250 new trips in the peak hours, but no additional road improvements were required for those intersections. And that study, traffic study, has been reviewed by the county and accepted. With regard to the industrial block, this light industrial block, which is the 150-meter setback distance from the lagoon, the developer is struggling with what to do with that. And as a result, what uses to allow, because of course that would drag traffic from that industrial use through the residential neighborhood, both the new residential neighborhood and the existing residential neighborhood. So at this time, we've requested that the county the township impose a holding provision so that no industrial uses would be permitted at this time. And we'll deal with that at a subsequent date, see if we can come up with an appropriate use for those lands. This is the phasing of the subdivision, so 4 phases overall. And it has been reviewed and accepted by the county. And that is my presentation, Warden. I'd be happy to answer any questions of council.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Pigeon. Now, is there any questions from any of the members of council? I can't see everybody, so if you do have one, just state your name and pose your question, please. Seeing none, then we have one registered speaker, and that is Mr. Dave Nargang. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Are you on the line, Mr. Nargang? I don't see. Matt, is Mr. Nargang there? Okay, so I guess we just move on to it. Okay, so then that will bring us down then to our third application and another draft plan of subdivision for a registered number Ontario Limited. And with that, it's the same rules, and I will go through them for everybody's sake, benefit, that we will have the planner give his report, and then we will have questions of council. We will then have the applicant, if they so desire, to comment and answer any questions of council. And I don't believe we have anybody registered to speak to this, so that should be the end of that particular application.
There's a Mr. Dykstra.
Mr. Dykstra, but he's with the consulting firm.
Yes,
Yes,
correct.
yeah. So with that, Mr. Huff, I will turn the floor over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. You have to excuse me. I've been having some technical difficulties on my end, so I'm afraid I didn't hear all of Mr. Pigeon's presentation. And we can get back to that as necessary. This application, again, is an East Shore Tavistock. This one's an intercept. The applicants are proposing, these are lands that are actually previously been subject to a plan of subdivision. They actually included the same street network, but were developed for, or proposed to be developed for over 40 townhouse units. The applicants have since resubmitted a draft plan for this block of land within the draft plan to develop these lands for 32 semi-detached dwellings or dwelling units plus a single detached. So the total number of units on this in this plan will be 33. Again, 16 semis, total of 32 units and one single. Lands are designated low density residential. The lands meet our requirements for the official plan for density. Again, simple connections of the street to existing streets in the neighborhood. The development itself has been the way that the housing is set up is going to be in keeping with what we would expect to see in this area relative to the housing that's been approved and is being developed to the west. And there are no issues with the capacity. Again, these lands, because they've been through a draft plan previously, this is really just a kind of a rejigging of that plan, as it were. We are satisfied that it meets all of our requirements, and we are recommending support of the application. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Huff from any of the members of council? Seeing none, we have a Mr. Gary Dykstra from Dillon Consulting Limited registered to speak. So Mr. Dykstra, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mayor Wharton. And we appreciate the work with county planning staff in processing this through. Like Mr. Huff indicated, this is just a completion of the subdivision and just refining what was going to be used for this block. And we just look forward to completing this development that we've been at since about 2008. And this is the last step in the process. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Are there any questions for Mr. Dykstra from any of the members of council? Seeing none, then we will move on. We have a motion to adjourn the public meeting. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tate. Resolved that can be, where are we here?
514.
514. Resolved that council adjourn the public meeting and reconvene as Oxford County Council with the warden in the chair at 9:58 a.m.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Those in favor of the adoption of the motion? I can't see anybody, so is there anybody that is opposed? So we'll declare it adopted then. There we go. So we'll do that again then. Everybody that is support, those in favor, please raise your hands again. Those opposed? Motion's carried. Good. So we have a motion then for consideration of the report number CP 2020, the draft plan of subdivision for Mount Elgin, and again, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tate. Resolved that the recommendation contained in report number CP 2020-280 titled Application for Draft Plan of Subdivision SB 18-06-4 Mount Elgin Developments, Inc. be adopted.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? No, motion is carried. That brings us down to consideration of the next application, and again, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tate. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number CP 2020-281 titled Application for Official Plan Amendment and Draft Plan of Subdivision OP 19-09-2 and SB 19-04-2 Millgate Homes, Inc. be adopted.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion is carried as well. And that brings us down to the third application, and Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Komisky. Resolved that the recommendation contained in number CP 2020-282 titled Application for Draft Plan of Subdivision SB 20-03-2 1187688 Ontario Limited be adopted.
You've heard the motion. Is there any more discussion or any comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. It brings us down to item number 6, that's delegations and presentations. And this now brings us down to delegations and presentation portion of the agenda, of which there is one. At this time, I would like to remind the presenters that they are limited in speaking to a period of not more than 15 minutes. And with that, I will ask Mr. Brian Smith and Rick Cox to, and Chris Kennedy, I believe, from Future Oxford and the Community Pillars, and to make their presentation if they're available.
Yes, I hope it's available. It's Brian Smith speaking, and I'm joined today by Chris Kennedy. Rick Cox has just had to back out. There have been some technical glitches going on.
Yeah, Rick is here.
Rick is here. Excellent. Sorry, Rick. Any case, I have presentation for you there. Today it's just a really brief reminder. Okay, I'm not sure what's. Are you seeing my shared screen or not? There we are. There's always some lag when we're doing it.
Yeah. We can see it now.
Excellent. Okay. I'll just adjust the format. From beginning. Okay. So that should make it more visible. So a brief reminder of the goals that we set out in 2015, a status update, and then pursuant to the comments from the last time I presented at this council, thank you very much, plans for action for 2021 and beyond. So I will go to slide 3. So with your support and with the astonishing work that's been done by volunteers on the Future Oxford Board and on the pillars, we've logged more than 303,500 hours of free work, and that's without counting the time of the action teams or groups who are aligned with the Future Oxford goals. That volunteer time helps account for the astonishing success rate of the actions that we've done. I'm going to apologize on technicalities here. There is supposed to be a video here. However, when I tried to screen it earlier, my computer crashed and Windows didn't update, and I'm not going to do that to all of you. So we'll move forward then to Chris speaking regarding some additional things. Chris? Not hearing Chris, I guess I'll talk to you. So some of the successes, this is a representative but not an exhaustive list. You can see that we had a campaign around local votes, Hodges Pond restoration, now open parking space and people available to go in, but yet more work to be done on it. Zero Waste did a planning event guide that has been used by lots and lots of people. 2017 was a response to when people said, oh, there's more ideas, we could add to that. So many of these actions are ongoing actions. In terms of talking about completion, we know that the future keeps extending in front of us. The Future Oxford Legacy Fund was established in 2017 and annually continues to provide grants and loans to entrepreneurs and other people in the area. And again, a continuing response. Food and organic waste is now a concern of the provincial government, as well it should be. And we've provided responses to them starting in 2015 and going up to quite recently, a response that's ready for them. So this has been for the Future Oxford Partnership year of reflection and looking at things that we have accomplished. Those accomplishments are plentiful. There is a plan to refresh the plan, to bring measurement things in it. There were a number of intangibles in it that we had some difficulty actually measuring out and saying how far we were along on their achievement. We want engagement in this to grow, and that is part of our plans for the upcoming year and years. My personal motto on this is that until somewhere near 120,000 people are fully engaged with the plan, our work isn't done. And we're going to look at how the organizational models are functioning for us. You're aware of the Zero Waste Innovator speakers during the fall, and Oxford County Library has been fabulous partners in doing those and in continuing to host those so they remain available to everybody else. In the economy pillar, we've recognized that having a workforce ready for the post-COVID recovery, that there are skills and experiences that need to be gained. And that's why, in addition to the Work in Oxford link where people can find jobs, There's now a link for volunteers in Oxford where people can develop job skills and experience and those long-term attachments that employers value. So we think that there's a record of reliable and useful work available in the volunteer sector, and that given how big a sector that is, that people will be an even better match with their employment. The announcements of significant investments in Southern Ontario and in alternative energy vehicles tells us that there is impetus to move towards hybrids and electric vehicles, and we need to know what are the barriers locally to adopt those technologies. Zero Poverty is in review of its organization. Volunteers did take action and continue to take action on homelessness, especially in the context of COVID, where protocols were created to avoid spread among that community. And if yours is not a community with a way to turn Halloween decorations into food for people or for farm animals, you'll have heard about the speakers who shared their economic and community rationales for moving zero waste into commercial businesses, major institutions like hospitals and schools and at home. All those talks remain available. I mentioned the Great Pumpkin Rescue. There are apparently 9 sites in various locations covering almost every area of our county at this point. And with a motion in Tillsonburg on Monday night that they are going to launch that for the following year. Really looking forward to the launch of a broader food rescue using foodrescue.ca as a platform to match excess food to need in Oxford. I'll turn it over to Rick now, and he'll cue me as to when I need to switch slides.
Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. So in 2021, our Future Oxford partnership is going to focus particularly on recruitment. We want to recruit members to the partnership and to our pillars and action teams. And we're also going to be working really hard to engage the broader population in Oxford County around our goals, especially now that we're going to be able to present them in a more clarified and refined way and increase the action of the community sustainability plan. We do have a 2021 to 2030 iteration of the sustainability plan that is prepared and being ready to release to the community to make sure that we're able to respond to and gather around community needs and emerging opportunities, emerging challenges, and launch action teams as needed. Next slide, please, Brian. The economy pillar with the workforce readiness plan and the brilliant results of the consultation that with businesses in Oxford by the economic activity by the economic region. Here it was led by Natalie Surridge, and we're going to be addressing the needs of employees in the recovery from COVID, using new technologies, moving more digital and supporting trades and apprenticeships, establishing a bulwark against offshoring, bringing more of the under 30 age group into the economy, and along with them, a more diverse workforce. In Oxford County, the agribusiness sector is a very large part of the economic pillar, and we will help it grow through work of the Future Oxford Partnership. In the urban settlements, there's going to be more intensification, and above standard homes mean net economic savings for residents. Things like the Harvey Woods Loft and Blossom Park residences are only a beginning here, and Embro being the site of 7 new structures and more projected. Thank you, Brian. The environmental pillar is going to be seeking to make economic savings and environmental gains through the identification of more places for no-mow vegetation and for pollinator gardens. Smart Energy is going to update the current technologies and complete a parallel consultation with the county staff on food and organic waste. Zero Waste Oxford is going to continue to advise the province on how the province can do more and how they can do more sooner and better to help Oxford County, and sharing that education with the residents of Oxford County. On the community pillar side, we've had the Canadian Index of Well-Being to show us the baseline and to track progress against. That progress is going to form the basis for our next steps, including our access to an internationally recognized business consultant a resident of Oxford who is prepared to share even more widely with businesses and the public through dialogues centered on Theory U and U-Lab hubs. The work in Oxford by Bridges Out of Poverty, Getting Ahead, and Circles will help drive the Zero Poverty Plan, and while the WERC's commitment to food rescue will push down costs for working women and their employment. If you think of costs and services as a teeter-totter, putting food into the hands of women, increasing their skills while acting as leaders of families will mean that another generation will realize a better future in Oxford. Thank you. So now we're in a position to entertain any questions from members of council, and we certainly appreciate the time that you have spent listening to us today and your support right from the inception of the Future Oxford concept and program. Your work, even when you didn't identify it as part of Future Oxford, but was the right thing to do for our community, actually supports the progress of the Future Oxford Community Sustainability Plan, and we're certainly able to and happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
I want to thank both Brian and Rick for their presentations and ask, are there any questions from any of the members of council with regards to the work with the Future Oxford Group? Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Warden. Through to either Rick or Brian. When you in your presentation, you talked of recruitment. How many more partners are you hoping to accomplish in your 2021-22 span? Like, do you have a number that you're hoping to gather, or you're just going out to do recruitment?
So a two-part answer to that. Thank you very much for the question, and through the warden to Councillor Talbot. So currently the Future Oxford Partnership is a board of 7 people. We plan to double that because in fact it was set up to allow a maximum of 15, and we do think that the more the mightier, not just the more the merrier, but the more the mightier, that will allow us to bring people from other sectors to that table and add more knowledge there. The pillars also have pillar committees as well, and we want to expand those. And I wasn't actually just jesting when I said earlier that by the time we get to the action teams, we are looking for about 120,000 people. So that everybody feels that they're invested in some way in the Future Oxford Plan, that it's benefiting them, and that some actions they do are moving our community forward. Very much.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any Deputy Warden?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple things, but building on Councillor Talbot's question, I thank her for that. The demographics of what you're tracking, or what you have currently, but as you try to expand the leadership team and whether it's board members or general public, is there a younger population already there? We had this conversation the other day regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Initiative, and great representation from across the county, but not so relative to the younger people across the county. So where does Future Oxford stand on current and future opportunity to include that more youthful voice that was referenced in slides?
Thank you very much for the question, Deputy Warden Molnar, through you, Warden, to the question. Engaging more of the youthful population has been a priority for Future Oxford, and is going to be one of the targeted groups we're going to want to make sure we bring to the table, both at the pillar committees and around the leadership table. Haven't exactly nailed down how that will work because we've struggled to attract that interest, but we are very determined to increase the diversity in the leadership in terms of demographics of all types, and age being one that we're particularly focused on.
No, I'm encouraged to hear that. And I guess the one message I share with all of us in reinforcing what you've just said, Mr. Cox, is that others are, I'll use the word struggling, but and it's a difficult time to recruit, but that demographic is so important to so many other, whether it's United Way, some workforce activities, the relationship between workforce recruitment and not necessarily just affordable housing, but attainable housing. So as we have a number of agencies, and including Future Oxford Initiative, I trust maybe through our own leadership here at the county, we're bringing those groups together that we're all a part of to ensure that we are kind of walking that path together, because it's really about attracting those voices that are very key to leading us into the future. So thank you, and Brian again.
Thanks, Deputy Warden Mulner. Are there any further questions or comments from any of the members of council? Seeing none, I want to thank both gentlemen for their presentation today, and all I can say is keep up the good work and see if you can get as many of the youth in there as you can, because they are going to be the future of this. So, take care and have a good day.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us down to item number 7, and that's consideration of delegations. And again, Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Komisky. Resolved that the information provided in the delegation from Future Oxford be received and considered along with report number CAO 2020-05 titled Future Oxford Progress 2015-2020.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any of the members? Seeing none, I will call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Brings us down to consideration of correspondence, and that's item number 10. And again, Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Komisky. Resolved that the correspondence from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated October 26, 2020 regarding the Social Service Relief Fund Phase 2 be received.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Any comments? Seeing none, I will call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion's carried. We have one from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, and this is Councillor Komisky.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ryan. Resolved that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority 2021 draft budget dated October 19th, 2020 be received and referred to 2021 budget and business plan deliberations.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no other discussion, I will call this question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down from reports from the department, and we've had the four planning reports actually, and that brings us down to the, where are we here? Yes, the with the regards to the appeal, and Councillor Komisky, it's you have the motion, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ryan. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number CP 2020-290 titled Appeal of the Decision of County Council OPA 249, file OP 20-06-2, Jeff and Tracy Fears, be adopted.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, then I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down to item number 9.2.1. And again, Councillor Komisky.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ryan. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number CAO 2020-05 titled Future Oxford Progress 2015-2020 be adopted.
Thank you. And Dennis Guy, I guess, is going to give us a presentation on this item. And Dennis, are you available?
Yes, I am, Warden. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me pull up the presentation. Everybody able to see the title slide there?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So Warden Martin, Deputy Warden Mulder, and councillors, thank you for your time this morning, both for Rick and Brian, who were up earlier, as well as myself now to provide updates on the Future Oxford Community Sustainability Plan. There we go. My name is Dennis Guy. I'm the county's manager of strategic initiatives. I've been in the role since January of this year. So while I've been able to meet some of you in person, meetings I had booked did get sidelined when COVID hit. So this is the first time that some of you will be hearing from me. One of my initiatives or in my portfolio is the Future Oxford Plan. My role is the staff lead for supporting the partnership, the action teams, and also connecting the county's efforts with the community's efforts. Make sure there we go. So the report before you today, which Councillor Comiskey has read off, the resolution for CAO 2020-05 outlines staff perspective and progress on Future Oxford. There are 3 recommendations. One is to receive the report. The next one is to support the ongoing activities of the Future Oxford group partners and volunteers. And then lastly, that this is shared with your respective municipalities. A lot of the things going on across the county are highlighted in the report. So this morning presentation that I'm going to provide is really structured into the same 3 parts that Brian and Rick's was, and that's where Future Oxford has been, where it is now, and where it's going. You may recall that Deputy Warden Mulder referenced this format at the last council meeting, so we all thought it fits really well to tell the narrative of the ongoing history of Future Oxford. So in terms of where we've been, I'll move pretty quickly because we did hear a lot about it already.
Dennis.
Yep.
Dennis, Michael Dubin here. Can you just show, right now we can see the next slide. Can you just hit the slideshow button so we can actually see the full slide?
Oh, sorry. Okay, you're seeing a different screen then. Give me a second. Okay. 2 seconds. There we go. You guys have it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
So me being the relatively new guy on the scene, I have been able to trace the origins back to around 2013, around discussions about community sustainability and ensuring that the official plan aligns with our thoughts on sustainability and vice versa. And back then it was recognized that sustainability needs to be viewed through a holistic lens, encompassing all the aspects of a high quality of life. So by about 2014, steering committee had been established and a period of extensive engagement and followed, conversations with individuals, organizations, businesses, including our governments throughout the county. And it was clear that a strong commitment to community sustainability was evident, as well as a recognition that we were building a plan built on a solid foundation that already existed. So community well-being, economic vibrancy, and environmental leadership is something that Oxford has always been committed to, part of who we are, and by no means was Future Oxford starting with a blank canvas. Titled the Future Oxford Community Sustainability Plan, Council formally adopted it in 2015, setting in motion a journey to implement a comprehensive list of actions aimed at the plan's vision of vibrant, prosperous, and responsible Oxford for all. So since then, the partnership and the action teams, and there are quite a few of them now, Smart Energy Oxford, Zero Waste Oxford, Reforest Oxford, Zero Poverty Oxford, Community Oxford, and the Economy Pillar have been working on this 70 actions that are contained in the plan. You heard earlier, and I'm happy to repeat it, that progress has been made on 94% of those actions through the commitment of many partners throughout Oxford. Brian wasn't able to get the technical part of the video shown this morning, but it will be posted after this meeting for sure so that all across the county can see it. And what it does is it summarizes a long list of accomplishments, which are all contained in the attachment to the report before you today, but we don't have the time to walk through all of them. A few things that stick out in my mind as we talked about it, I'd like to reference is the Local Votes Matter campaign during the 2018 municipal election, the Canadian Index of Wellbeing Survey to baseline wellbeing, certainly the Future Oxford Legacy Fund, Hodges Pond restoration, the local immigration partnerships, cultural diversity training, Oxford Fresh, which if I understand correctly, began as a bit of a pilot partnership between Tourism Oxford and Zora Township, the 100% renewable energy commitment, There was a poverty reduction town hall hosted by Operation Sharing. The We Grow Together campaign by RODC and their partners showcasing local businesses. Not sure if you've seen some of those videos. They're fantastic. And in fact, they ended up through some of our connections in the economy pillar, leading to some CTV London exposure for 3 local companies so far. The Youth Entrepreneurs Partnership Table a few years back, and also the Zero Waste Event Planning Guide and workshops, which again, if I've traced history correctly, came out of the Canterbury Folk Festival's effort to be zero waste event. And notwithstanding, a key element to the success of those accomplishments is council support over the past 5 to 6 years. The county itself is an important contributor, both in a visionary sense, as well as through our day-to-day service delivery in enhancing quality of life. So here we are in 2020, and it goes without saying that this year has been one that required all of us to adapt to the changing environments around us. As I mentioned at the top of my presentation, I'm fairly new to the county. My first day was January 2nd, so technically I've been here for just over 10 months, but I think that that might be the equivalent of maybe 5 or 6 months in COVID terms. Given that I expected I would have been out and about and attending much more in-person events by now, certainly ones hosted throughout all of your municipalities. That said, as the staff lead for Future Oxford, I've been able to get to know quite a few volunteers and key stakeholders in the network, which I'm very pleased to say have adapted to the virtual format of meetings and continued to meet together this whole time. Just quickly about myself, I have been in municipal government for just over 20 years, working in various roles in waste management, enterprise risk assessment, continuous improvement, project management, and as well as transit and paratransit. Working with the partnership itself, we have spent a good chunk this year working on a refresh of the plan, including a facilitated collective impact evaluation of how we're working, first as well as what we're working on. And then Brian and Rick referenced an organizational model review. The whole premise to these discussions was that after 5 years of going strong, we want to make sure we're still heading in the right direction and that we're addressing the needs and opportunities of today, not just yesterday. And as much as I would love, and I'm sure Brian and Rick as well, to provide what that refresh plan looks like to you today, we definitely recognize that presenting something before collaborating with your respective councils as well as the broader community would be premature, and I'll come back to this in a couple slides. Pretty obvious, we produced the 2015 to 2020 progress report that's before you today, documenting as many accomplishments as we could give within our, find within our reach, which I do want to draw your attention to, and certainly anybody listening in, it's not considered to be all encompassing. We would love it to be, but we do recognize the challenges of documenting each and every single accomplishment across our communities. So we really think of it as a work in progress that we can always add to this list, and we're really never quite complete. Some of the other things that we also did throughout the year, partnering with Community Employment Services and the Elgin Middlesex Oxford Workforce Planning and Development Board to produce the Workforce Readiness Plan, supported the Waste Innovators Speaker Series. We did begin a Zero Poverty Organizational Model Review, heading towards an action-oriented update of that plan. Did do some research on on-bill financing opportunities for renewable energy in the residential sector through some FCM funding opportunities. And we are, Brian referenced Volunteer in Oxford. We're not quite there yet. We're in the early days of working to enhance that tool, which really became evident in some of the discussions around how volunteers were being coordinated through the early days of the pandemic. So where we're going. Brian and Rick presented some of the activities, so a little bit of this will be repetitious. We are certainly aligned in where we're going. We'll continue to refine the Future Oxford organizational model to make sure it remains current and effective. We'll continue to develop the 2021 to 2030 iteration of the original plan with the focus on both engagement and how we're going to facilitate meaningful dialogue in a virtual environment. And I think that speaks to Deputy Warden Molnar's comments as well about youth, not just reaching youth and other audiences, but reaching them in meaningful ways. So the engagement won't just focus on the plan itself, but after many hours of conversations with a smaller working group, we developed 3 key engagement objectives. And the first is to celebrate these successes. So today's celebration really marks the beginning of looking at the accomplishments of the past 5 years and more importantly, the people behind them. So it's important to the partnership that we recognize and appreciate the faces and places that contribute to Oxford's high quality of life. We also want to communicate the Future Oxford narrative, and this goes to Brian's, we're not done until 120,000 people are behind it. Because not everybody knows about Future Oxford, and it's not necessarily that they must to do what they do in a sustainable way. But we know from the past 5 years of implementing the plan that communities, economies, and environments throughout Oxford are really interested in sustainability. So the more we can tell the story, the better, which leads to that third objective, and it has been referred to as the recruitment, including succession planning for the partnership itself. So 5 years on, we've got some great veterans like Brian and Chris and Rick involved, and they really want to onboard some fresh faces, some fresh ideas, diverse perspectives. So they know that their own efforts will be better off with more voices at the table. And then following on the heels of a successful speaker series this fall that highlighted some of Oxford's waste innovators in commercial, institutional, and residential sectors, we're confident we can expand that series into other aspects of sustainability in the community and economy pillars. Like this action itself is one that lends itself really well to a virtual environment. So we want to get into this rhythm of showcasing other innovators in Oxford. And I do want to acknowledge both Zero Waste Oxford and the Oxford County Libraries for helping us host these events. That collaborative nature of how they work together with us was really key to our success. And last but surely not least, is supporting the workforce readiness partners in their activities. While workforce needs may not be exactly the same as they were pre-COVID, employers are still faced with challenges, so it seems logical that we devote some time to supporting elements of this plan that aim for the workforce readiness. Not to be redundant, but just to reiterate, based on the content of the report as well as the presentation, these are the recommendations before you today to receive the report, to seek your ongoing support of the activities of Future Oxford, and lastly, that it be shared with your respective municipalities. So thank you for your time and attention, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And if you could take your screen down, that way I could see everybody.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the members for Dennis? Deputy Warden Molnar.
Yeah, very briefly, both your presentation, there's a report and a resolution on the floor, and I appreciated the comprehensive review of the 70 items and the way it was outlined, work in progress. It was just very well put together. One thing I would ask from the perspective of Future Oxford and how you can evaluate and see the progress that has been made on some of these initiatives. Is there an opportunity, or has there been an opportunity to review, let's call it what it is, red tape and the barriers to succeed on these initiatives based on some things that are right here, both at the provincial level, our own county level, and at the municipal levels, where we all should be working in partnership? Are there, I'm not asking you to identify them, but is it something that we should be reviewing, because those items have been identified as the future sustainability criteria, and we need to ensure that we're eliminating any barriers for their success.
To the warden, to Deputy Warden Molnar, we haven't spoke specifically about that, but it seems both logical and intuitive that we do. So I would think that based on your comments today, it's something I'll take to the next partnership meeting.
Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you, Warden Martin. Just a quick comment or question, Dennis. In a state that we're in this COVID pandemic, it is, there's a certain degree of uncertainty. People are feeling a little bit uncomfortable. There's a certain amount of community angst, even fear of the future, because we don't actually know what it looks like. And I'm just wondering, as you're working through this, and you've had some experience in, in dealing with people and trying to move programs forward, I'm just wondering how you see kind of the opportunities for advancement in a time when, people are feeling a little bit uneasy and they tend to kind of step back rather than step forward. And well, I could argue that there's a lot of step forward in Oxford County in the last few months. If you simply look at construction and all that, there is that kind of underlying community uncertainty. And I'm just wondering what you can do to, or what your suggestions would be around addressing that, that community uncertainty.
Warden and Councillor Mayberry, great question. I think a couple things in really playing off the objectives that the group have collectively come up with is this, first of all, celebrating the successes because, you know, it shows proof that sustainability already exists here in Oxford, that it's not something new, that it's not as, although it's future thinking, it's also exists in the present. And normally I would say what we really need is some, you know, one-on-one or one-to-some interaction in person to have the conversations that help us listen to those concerns and fears and anxieties in order to be able to then decide what it is some of the volunteers and action teams can then go do. One of the things I think it was Rick who spoke to the slide, was organizing around emerging needs. And that's really what the consultation is meant to do, is to identify some of the things you're talking about and then say, okay, and through the Future Oxford Network, who, actually, I guess to some of the stuff Deputy Mulder was saying too, about the red tape, is then grabbing the right partners together to address that particular issue, to help allay those concerns. One of the things that it really struck me, whether it's as a newcomer or just something I hadn't heard before in discussions with the partnership earlier this year, that I have to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly how the one member put it, but she wasn't around at the inception of it, but what she noticed was, wow, so here we are in the midst of a pandemic where a lot of systemic issues are coming to light for a lot of people, or we're being reminded of them. A lot of them are things that the original steering committee saw 5 years ago and said, these are the things that make Oxford so great or would make Oxford even better. And I think there's some opportunity in there for us to say, yeah, like, Oxford agrees, we get it. We've been trying to work on that and have actually been working on it for actively through a volunteer network for the past 5 years.
Any follow-up questions for Dennis? Do you want to hear the motion again? Hearing none, so I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down to item 9.3, and that's Public Works Report, the all-way stop at Oxford Road 59 and 8. And Councillor Ryan, I believe you have that resolution.
Yes, Warden, moved by Ryan, seconded by McKay. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number PW 2020-55 titled Always Stop at Oxford County Road 59 and Oxford Road 8, Hickson, be adopted.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. That brings us down to Public Works 2020-56, the food organic waste policy, and again, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by Ryan, seconded by McKay. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number PW 2020-56 titled Proposal to Amend the Food and Waste Organic Waste Policy Statement, Environmental Registry of Ontario, posting number 019-2498, be adopted.
Thank you. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Brings us down to corporate services and the financial update and business plan, and Councillor Ryan again.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by Ryan, seconded by McKay. Resolved that the recommendations contained in report number CS 2020-48 titled Financial Update and Business Plan Review September be adopted.
Thank you. Ms. Buckner, are you on the line? Do you wish to comment on this very high level, or just entertain questions?
Certainly, I'll just highlight, if I could, through the warden to council, just there is a significant change in what we were projecting in terms of a surplus or deficit for the end of the year. And that has to do with some newfound resources that we've received from the province in particular, and then savings in other areas that are are explained further in detail in the report. We've got another $633,000 for Whittingford Lodge long-term care services as they relate to frontline care. And then there are some infection prevention and control minor capital funding of almost $300,000. A little bit more in the pandemic pay than what was anticipated. And then the Safe Restart funding that we had alluded to in the last report now has materialized, and it's just shy of $1 million. And you can find all of that in table 1 of the report. And yeah, the library levy has added to that increase too slightly. It's $532,000. I believe the last report it was around 300. And then the water and wastewater surplus now is looking at about $130,000. So overall, a good news story at this point in time. If there's any questions, I can entertain them now.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Are there any questions for the Director of Corporate Services? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down to item 9.4.2, the year-end reserves. And Councillor McKay, you have that motion, I believe.
Moved by McKay, seconded by Peterson, resolve the recommendations contained in report CS 2020-49, reserves year-end allocation and policy review be adopted.
Thank you. Again, Lynn, are you available to, do you want to just highlight this, or it's been, we've had it for a fair time to read, but do you want to highlight items in there for us?
Certainly, just the allocations we're looking at seeking council's approval for a slight deviation in the policy, although we're not looking to amend the policy for the long term. We're hoping that council will give consideration to providing an additional amount to the corporate general reserve to allow for tax stabilization as we are facing uncertain times, and this will help us to, address any unanticipated COVID-related challenges or opportunities that arise over the course of the next few years. So I think it's detailed in the report there. If there's any specific questions of council, I can entertain them now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Warden. Not a question for our director, but more for council's consideration. Just hearing how important it is right now, especially with the housing needs that we have and the pressures that people are facing. We've heard it through a number of the community groups as well as Future Oxford. And I'm wondering if maybe this question actually should be directed to Mr. Beaton. If we were to increase the percentage that went to the housing reserve, would we be able to provide additional rent supplements for individuals to help alleviate some of the pressures that they're facing and some of the issues that have really become magnified in the last few months?
Paul, could you answer that?
Certainly. I think the idea of rent supplements in today's day and age has become less attractive because the difference between the market rents that are being charged at $1,400 to $1,600 a month, the subsidies are so large that you don't get much bang for your buck. I think we're probably better off using any extra money we can come up with in terms of building new projects where we can have rental levels set for a 25-year period at a percentage of the market, which seems to be in demand right now. We have a couple projects contemplated for next year and a couple under construction right now that are accomplishing that. And we do have a fairly sizable rent supplement budget already, but it's difficult to bridge the difference between what, you know, somebody can afford on a regular income at $400 a month and then having to bridge it for $1,000 a month. You don't get much bang for your buck, or in terms of number of people you can serve. So we don't say no to anybody, but new construction of long-term affordable units is much more attractive in this day and age.
Follow-up, Councillor Birch? Okay, Deputy Warden Mulliner?
So just once again, looking for confirmation that this is a direction to place year-end reserves in specific accounts, and that at any point in time with a majority of council, funds can be allocated to any and all project through resolution, including some of the recommendations or ideas just introduced by Member Birch. I would look for confirmation that that is correct.
Lynn, would you comment on that?
Certainly, through the warden to Deputy Warden Mulliner, I can confirm that that is the case.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. That brings us down to 9.4.3, the business plan and budget, and I believe Councillor McKay, you have that one as well.
Moved by McKay, seconded by Peterson. Resolve the recommendation contained in report CS 2020-50, 2021 business plans and budget be adopted.
Thank you. And I feel, Michael, that you want to just kind of start this off. Mr. Dubin? Where'd you go?
There we go.
There you go. We can hear you now.
All right. Thank you, Warden. Matt, stop playing with my video. There we go. Okay, thank you, Warden. So I just wanted to briefly start off. I know that traditionally in the past, perhaps for a while, the CAO is the one who delivered the budget. I'm actually not one of those who believes in that. I have some high-level things that I would like to say, but ultimately I would turn it over to our treasurer to deliver the budget. I do want to confirm with members of council, obviously this is a challenging budget year. We've heard comments over the last little while. People are struggling. We know that. Not just people, but businesses are struggling. The pandemic has had a significant negative impact on many people. So we took, in my opinion, a little bit of a different approach to the budget this year, which is to make some assumptions of what next year might look like. I can tell you that we assumed that we wouldn't wake up after New Year's Eve celebration on January 1st of 2021 and think that everything was suddenly okay. Clearly, some of the things that we're seeing this year are going to carry over into next year. No one seems to know how long, but we had to make some assumptions. So some of the areas where perhaps we have seen some, some reductions in cost, things like mileage, office supplies, minor electricity costs, travel and conference, all those things that you would expect have gone down. We've assumed that we're going to see the same thing for at least part of next year as well. But by the same token, we think that some of the pressures are going to go up. So first of all, council has taken steps to reduce the impact on individuals. We assume that that's going to continue to be in place next year. Some of the other pressures would be additional PPE. Obviously, at Woodingford Lodge, we have to have additional staff to keep people safe. So on one hand, while we think that some pressures will be there, some potential savings will be in place as well. So we've made that assumption that part of next year, at the very least, we're going to see those trends, both negative and positive, up and down from a budget perspective. We sort of took this year as a year where we really were tough on whether or not we were going to start new initiatives. There are some new initiatives that we feel do have to go ahead, but others that we've decided to defer in order to come in at the 2.12 number that you're seeing, 2.1 increase over 2020, I think is a good starting point. We're pleased with what we're able to present to you, but we had to defer certain things that we wanted to do in 2021 just because of the uncertainty around the year. The budget does contain some proposed staff decreases and some proposed staff increases, but the majority of the increases are in Whittingford Lodge, and they're temporary increases to deal with COVID, and also some of them related to child services, which is 100% funded by the province. So that's the majority of the numbers. So when people see, a number of more than a dozen, I want folks to understand that most of those are temporary, and most of those are 100% funded in favor of children's services in the community. I want to thank the finance staff. Obviously, my first time working with the finance staff and the SMT and EMT. It's a lot of work. It's a big organization, a lot of moving parts, a lot of funding sources, and they certainly do a heck of a job to try to put something in front of you as a starting point. We're happy to spend the next couple of weeks, I guess, going over some of these things. I do want to point out is that typically staff does not get involved in requests for grants from local groups. That's something we've always left up to members of council, and we've done that again. So whatever people have come forward asking for X amount of dollars, it is in the draft budget. All I would ask is that council sort of use the same COVID lens that we used with respect to corporate operations as you review those. Clearly, some activities are not going to happen in 2021, at least the first half of 2021. Most of the groups came forward and acknowledged that most of what they wanted to do in 2020 didn't happen, and so many of them didn't even spend the money. So I guess I'd just ask council to consider whether or not we want to take a little bit of a different approach to grants for 2021, given the situation that we're in. And I'm not speaking to the merits of any application. I just think we should apply the same lens as consistently as we can. I do also want to point out that there's no new money in the budget for broadband. And I'm sure one or more of the councillors will bring this up when we get to it. There have been some recent announcements by the feds, and I think we have a better understanding now of what it means. Initially, I think we thought it was more focused at the ISPs themselves, but there's a significant amount of money available out there for municipalities for even better broadband service than we're going to see through SWIFT 1.0. So I think that's something that we probably will have to talk about. It's not reflected in the budget because this is new information, but it's something that I think council needs to talk about, if not this year, certainly very soon, in order for us to play our part to ensure that that comes our way. So those are my general comments, and I'd like to turn over the presentation to Lynn Buchner, our Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Michael, for your preliminary comments on the budget. Can everyone, actually, let me just put this in slideshow mode here. Can you see my slideshow screen?
Yes, we can, Lynn.
Perfect. Okay. Well, the purpose of today's presentation is just to give you a preview of what's in the 2021 Business Plan and Budget Highlight package that's been circulated to council and is also posted on the county's website, available for the public's purview as well. So in that package, we explain the budget process, and it reviews the highlights and the overview of the information that has been incorporated in this year's draft business plan and budget. So the process itself, and Michael touched on this slightly, it starts off with department planning, and that process begins and it carries on through June to September. And that's each department looking at, based on the strategic plan that's been set by council, what are the departmental goals and objectives that need to be reached in this year in order to deliver those 6 focus areas within the strategic plan. And they work in concert with the financial analysts to help develop the figures and based on estimates of the experts in the field. And then once that package is pulled together, senior management team conducts a peer review, and that usually takes place over the course of the month of October. And then that brings us to today. We've got a package based on, and Michael very well described the scrutiny that that senior management undertook and their peer review in order to get it to what we feel is a palatable and a responsible budget for 2021. So now this budget is before council for consideration. So we've got 4 special council meetings planned for the deliberation. The first 2 will be comprised of presentations of the details in each one of the departmental budgets at the service level. And then hopefully we will get council approval if they're comfortable to do so in December. So the development of the budget itself has several components to it. So we start with a base budget, and it's largely based on the 2020 approved budget. And we've incorporated some cost of living increases, although minor in this past year. We are seeing some slight increases in supply chain as well. There's some uncontrollable increases in some of our materials for some, particularly the construction projects. And then we look at one-time items and service levels. So there might be increases or decreases in any one of these drivers within the budget. And then, as Michael alluded to, the new initiatives. We only have one in this year, and I'll address that shortly. And then there's operating impacts of capital. So even though we've got a capital plan, to pay for the infrastructure itself, it's not just a one-time cost. There's ongoing operational costs that need to be incorporated in the operating budget. And so you'll see those reflected as well. And new to the 2021 budget, but not new to us in experience for 2020's impacts on our budget, is the COVID costs and some savings. So you'll see those reflected in the draft 2021 budget as well. And again, Michael alluded to some of those very well, so I'll get into those in detail. And then there's provincial funding changes. And we thought the last 2 years presented a lot of funding changes from the provincial level with the new Ford government. But this past year, 2020, to address all the pressures and the challenges with COVID-19, we have seen an enormous amount of funding changes, and which are going to carry over, many of them, into 2021. So considering all of those factors, then that's how we arrive at the 2021 draft budget. So in your budget package, you'll find a detailed summary of the figures that have gone in to support each one of those services. So it's aligned by revenue and expenses, and the expenses are grouped in accordance with the financial information return as prescribed by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And so it's a common grouping for municipalities. So it would be something that all councillors and municipal administration would be familiar with. And then we've separated and aligned those budgets by reserve transfers for capital and operating, and the development charges and the surpluses, just to make it a little more easy to understand. Also in your budget package, you'll see for each one of the services, a budget impact chart. So the budget impact chart will explain to the reader the difference between the 2020 approved budget and the 2021 requested budget. So it takes into account the base budget changes, any one-time or capital changes, any new initiatives if there are any, and then the total cost then and how it's being funded. So in this particular one that's on the slide now shows total revenues of 8.6 million and taxation at 7.6 million to fund the $16.3 million budget. So in terms of highlights and overview, so this is the front page cover of your budget package that's been circulated to council. And again, the electronic version is available on the county's website. And you'll find throughout the presentations that you'll see over the course of the deliberation meetings, you'll see this circle with a page number attached. So that will help councillors and members of the public that are following the process where they can find that particular item on the screen within the information package. So starting off with the overall budget for 2021, the levy is $68.2 million. The gross expenditures that make up that budget are $271 million. Of that, 66.3 million is capital. We have gross revenues of 204.9 million. We have general revenues, which are made up of federal and provincial grants, water, wastewater, user fees, interest income, and capital contributions, and then other sources. And they are, and other sources of $71.6 million. So that requires 68.2 million to be generated through the levy. And we have three separate levies. We have a general levy, and it is going up 2.1% year over year to $64.2 million. The library levy, the library board, as you'll see in the report on the council agenda today, is recommending to county council that the library levy remains static year over year from 2020, and that is at $4 million. And then the court security grant for the city of Woodstock to deliver court security and prisoner transportation at the provincial court has been set by has been proposed by the local court advisory committee to be just under $100,000 for 2021. In terms of expenditures, you can see how the expenditures are distributed across all of the services, with water and wastewater being the highest contributor at 28%, roads at 17%, human services in line with roads at 17%, and Woodingford Lodge is 12%. And you can see the others around the pie chart there in terms of what their expenditure requirement is of the total budget. In terms of taxation, the per household contribution for the general levy is just under $4,000. The library levy of $162 per household, and that only relates to 7 of the area municipalities, the exception being Woodstock, as they fund a separate library service here in Woodstock. And then there's court security. Court security funding requirements is about $3 per household. And again, it's distributed amongst 7 of the area municipalities, with Woodstock being excluded, as that grant goes to support the services provided by Woodstock Police Services in the city of Woodstock for criminal court services. And in terms of water and wastewater rates, the average per household is about $2,300, and that will vary depending on which system you're serviced by. And then you can see the other services and what portion each household is contributing to those services on the pie chart. Okay, in terms of the draft budget impacts, you can see we've got one-time items totaling $5.6 million. You can see there how it's being funded, $5.5 million through reserves, and then $102,000 by taxation. In terms of service level impacts, we've got $632,000. $500,000 is funding from reserves. We've lost some funding on service level over the course of the year. So that means that we have to collect $259,000 from taxation. In terms of new initiatives, as I mentioned, there is one. So this is the one new initiative for library services, a total cost of $116,000. $5,000 to be funded through reserves, and $21,650 are operating costs to sustain that one-time initiative. And so that's, again, within that zero increase levy for library services. And then we got the COVID costs, and savings are netted in there as well. So we've got 1.3 million in additional costs, 35,000 coming from reserves and 1.3 from other funding. And that's typically provincial funding and some federal funding in some cases as well. Modernization funding, as you will recall, at your last council meeting, you supported a recommendation to support several initiatives that were approved for funding under the modernization funding of $725,000 that was provided by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to advance initiatives that would find future savings and efficiencies in municipal services. So we've got those incorporated into the 2021 budget as well. And then provincial funding changes that occurred over the course of the year. So there was a loss of just over 400,000 in some funding areas. So you can see that the draft levy increase over the prior year amounts to $1.3 million. And that means that our base budget increase for 2021 is 472,000, representing 0.7% of the 2% overall increase. And so that 7% is fairly close to the cost of living increase year over year at 0.5%. So we feel, again, it is a good, responsible budget, quite in line with cost of living. And Michael addressed some of the changes for full-time equivalent plan for 2021. You can see that starting in 2020, we had 573,000 or 573.6 FTEs in our plan to deliver the services in 2020. And now with the changes that we're proposing or that we deem to be necessary to deliver a responsible budget in 2021, it's going to require 588.2 FTEs. And as Michael alluded to, there's you can see that the ones with the asterisks beside under the funded by grant column, those with the asterisks are all temporary and expected to only be required for at least the year. Woodingford Lodge, we've got 4.9, and that represents additional hours. That doesn't necessarily mean additional bodies, but additional hours required to deliver the frontline service that is necessary through COVID. In terms of the library, that 0.2 increase is related to the new initiative. So that would be just for the implementation of that project, and then it's anticipated it would be no longer required. Paramedic services, the 1.1, again, to address COVID-related pressures on their workforce. And then human resources, there was a modernization fund project to implement human resources information systems application. And so that's anticipated to be required just for the year to get that implementation complete. So you can see the overall increase is 14.6, but of that amount, 14.2 are either grant funded or just temporary in nature. So the one new initiative I've been alluding to is for the library services. So this is RFID technology. So this is radio frequency ID, and it will be introduced in all of the 14 library branches, and it will help streamline services, reduce administrative checking of the cataloging and the books on the shelves to make sure that they're appropriately categorized, and it will also help with self-checkouts. There will be self-checkout kiosks installed in both Ingersoll and Tillsonburg, the two large branches. Grants that are included in the 2020 budget largely align with the 2020 grants, with the exception of there's the North Oxford Intercommunity Bus Transit project that was approved by council with a commitment of $120,000 for 2021. And then, as you will recall in that report, there was a commitment to an ongoing operational grant of $22,500 for the 6 remaining years. As you'll recall, the Social Planning Council Oxford, in their delegation before council, they requested an increase in their funding allocation for 2021. And however, as the draft 2021 budget is before you now, it contains the same amount as was provided in past years at $55,000. In terms of our capital plan, you can see how it's broken down there, the $66.3 million in total. So we've got 1.2 in minor capital, fleet and equipment is 4.1 million, social housing and corporate facilities, 5.2 million. Road network being the second highest need, 16.8 million. And then coupled with bridges and culverts. Overall, that's almost $25 million. And then water and wastewater makes up $32 million of our capital budget for 2021. In terms of funding the capital plan, you can see that $0.2 million or $200,000 is coming from taxation. We're proposing 4.4 for debentures and other sources being benefiting property owner capital contributions and such at 1.6 million. In terms of water and wastewater user rates, 20.7 million. Other capital reserves, 22 million. Development charges, so the growth community paying for growth, just under $10 million. And then we've got the gas tax grants funding 7.5 million. So overall, a 16.7% increase in our total capital budget over 2020. And then this is how we fund the capital budget. So you can see, starting with the operating fund, the bubble at the top there, we feed from that $40.1 million into the reserve fund. And we also fund on the other side of the diagram, 6.2 million directly to the capital fund. So the total between those two contributions to the capital fund of 66.3 help to support the funding of those projects as described before. And that 40.1 million, you can see what the components of that are on the right-hand side of the screen, with the general levy funding 15.6 million, the library levy of just around $100,000, and water and wastewater rates representing $14 million. Then we've got the gas tax grant of 3.5. And the OCF grant, we have yet to hear from the province in terms of whether we'll be eligible for the next round of that funding. And then development charge revenues of 6.9 million. So our first budget meeting, as I mentioned earlier, we'll start off with presentations from each of the departments. We won't get through them all likely in that first day, but we hope to get through as much as we can. And those presentations then will lead us into more in-depth deliberations through the latter part of the process. So our first budget meeting is scheduled for a week from yesterday, November the 18th, and we'll be starting at 9 a.m. Any questions or comments of council?
Thank you very much, Lynn. Are there any questions from any members of council for their Director of Corporate Services? I can't see any. So if there is somebody, just state your name and state your question if you have one. Okay, seeing none then, I will call for the vote then, or do you want to hear the motion again? Oh, okay then, so I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion is carried. It brings us down to item 9.4.4, that is the County Library Business Plan, and Councillor McKay again.
Moved by McKay, seconded by Peterson. Resolve the recommendation contained in report CS 2020-52, 2021 Oxford County Library Business Plan and Budget be adopted.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Brings us down to 9.4.5, the Court Security Grant Levy, and Councillor Peterson.
Moved by Peterson, second by Moeller. Resolved that the recommendation contained in report number CS 2020-53 titled 2021 Court Security Grant Levy be adopted.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Pending items under unfinished business, it's Councillor Peterson. It's 10.2.
Moved by Peterson, seconded by Moeller. Resolved that information provided in briefing note number 2 regarding report number CS 2020-40 titled 2021 to 2024 water and wastewater rates be received as information.
You've heard the motion. Is there any questions? Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, just a quick point of clarity. I think I know the answer, but I want to ask to make sure. I just want to make sure that when it says 2021 to 2024, I know we talked about that we're going to meet and discuss it. I just want to, when it says that whole length, I just want to make sure that we're still able to discuss and change or keep those rates that were proposed.
Lynn, can you respond to that?
Certainly, through the warden to Councillor Peterson. Yes, there's nothing, this is for information only that was requested at the last meeting. So there's no change proposed to what was decided at the last meeting. So there still will be an opportunity for the rural municipalities to get together to discuss the consolidation of the wastewater township systems into one financial system. So nothing has changed in that regard.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Warden. Not a question, just a comment through yourself to our director as well as to the manager of finance. Thank you very much for this presentation of those numbers. That's very helpful, and I appreciate all of the hard work.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Molnar, you had a question?
Yeah, just very briefly, and I know there's been additional discussion in other municipalities relative to equity. But today, adopting and moving forward as a direction of council as we work together, and understanding, as was referenced by the Director of Public Works at our last session, that if and when, and identified more appropriately as when, amendments are made to the requirement for rates structures regarding primarily wastewater, that the bylaw is a process that can be amended and any new rate structure introduced. And I guess I'm really talking about process as we move forward.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll put the question in. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down to 10.2, the County Council composition and election of heads of council. Just an update that the committee that did go to Toronto last spring met on Tuesday, and we discussed this at great depth. We had good discussion, and what is going to happen from here on, I am going to go out and I'm going to tour the 8 area municipalities and to see if there's any common consensus that we can come up with regards to trying to come up with a triple majority. The feeling of the committee was that we need to find a way somehow to come up with a triple majority so that we can at least decide where we're going to go down the road, rather than leave it up to somebody else to decide who we're going to be involved with and what is going to happen. We feel like it's just the same as we did a year ago with the regional review. We want to be involved with whatever is going to happen. So with that, I originally, when becoming elected as warden, had originally planned on going out to tour all the 8 area municipalities anyway, and because of the regional review and then the CAO recruitment, and now we're into COVID, I haven't done that. But like we said in the past, out of everything, a little good must come, and this is going to put me out there to go and visit with the area municipalities. I would much rather have done it all in person, but I do some meet in person and some meet virtual. So we will have to adapt to whichever way you meet. But I look forward to meeting with each and every one of you and your councils, and hopefully at the end of the day, we can come up with a common consensus. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them if I can. Councillor Ryan.
No question, Warden. I just wanted to thank you for your, well, frankly, for your leadership on reconvening that group and trying to find any way forward for us, and encourage you to try and find a way where Oxford County and its residents have a say in what their council composition is, as opposed to us not achieving some form of triple majority and having it largely left up to the provincial government potentially. So just thanks and encouragement.
Thank you for your comments. Any further question, Deputy Warden Molnar?
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mayberry that County Council hereby receives a verbal report from CAO regarding the results of the service delivery review, area municipal council consultation process request for quotation.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. I apologize.
Pardon me?
That was wrong. Councillor Peterson's on the floor. I got 11:30. Through the chair, I apologize.
That's quite all right. I make mistakes too, Deputy Warden, so it's quite all right. Any further discussion or comments? I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Now, Deputy Warden Muller.
Yes, I'm very pleased to introduce a resolution as moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mayberry and resolved that County Council hereby receives a verbal report from the CAO regarding results of the service delivery review, area municipal council consultation process request for quotation.
And with that then, Michael, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Warden. I'll make it brief. Hopefully members of council recall that on September 23rd, there was a report from the warden, wherein we sort of laid out a process that we might be able to follow to get a facilitated session so that those 4 questions that were the subject of actually multiple resolutions at this point. There was one in June and another one in September. So we were asked to go out and identify a facilitator that would work with all members of council and area municipalities as well. We did, in fact, go out with a request for quotations. We reached out to 5 different organizations. All 5 were known to either to me or certainly to the County of Oxford because they've done some work for us before. 3 of them declined to give us a quote, citing that there wasn't enough time. And then 2 did provide quotes. Unfortunately, if you recall, in the September 23rd report under the financial section, we indicated that we had a budget of $10,000. Both quotes came in over $10,000. One before HST was $15,600, I believe. And then the other one was well over $24,000. And it should be noted that in a number of cases, people indicated that the timeframes were too tight, and meeting this way, meaning meeting electronically with 8 different municipalities, was probably not the best way to do this. So what we thought we would do is report that to you today and seek some direction. So I guess there's a couple of options. One is you can plow ahead and we'll amend the budget to $15,920 plus HST and go ahead with the proponent that was willing to do it for that cost. Another option is to defer this until such time as we have a better opportunity to safely get all the people in the room at the same time. So I'm really at your pleasure. Strategy Corps, by the way, is the organization, I think some of you may know them, but they're the organization that provided the lowest bid, and they are prepared to do the work, but they did point out that this probably isn't the best way to do it, but they'll take our money and get it done if that's what council so wishes. So those are my comments, Warden, subject to any questions that there may be.
Are there any questions for Michael with regards to his verbal report?
So I will need direction one way or another.
Deputy Warden Molnar?
Yeah, I have a resolution as was on the floor and seconded by Councillor Mayberry. Through the chair, Councillor Mayberry, are you in a position to second an amendment to the resolution on the floor that I hold in my hand that would provide direction to the CAO to proceed with the hiring of Stratcor to facilitate the process?
I'd be prepared to second that.
If I could, Councillor Deputy Warden Molnar, just for a minute, I do have another option for a motion here if you want to. It's moved and seconded by whoever. The county council hereby receives a verbal report from CAO regarding results of the service delivery review. Area Municipal Council consultation process request for quotations. And further, the council approves the request for quotation from Strategy Corps, Inc. in the amount of $15,920 plus HST and related expenses funded from the general reserve. And I believe that is basically what you were trying to say?
Yeah, so with the concurrence of the seconder, I'll withdraw my resolution and place that on the floor, which is really all I was going to do.
With the same mover and seconder?
With the concurrence. Seconder.
And the seconder, you are concur with the mover?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Warden.
And you are willing to second the other proposed motion as well?
Yes, I am.
So we now have a motion on the floor that we budget the money and we move forward with the interview. So are there any questions? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? One opposed, so the motion is carried. And that brings us down to, this now brings us to closed session portion of the meeting for which live streaming will cease and we will return shortly. And I have a motion by Deputy Warden Molnar.
It's moved by myself, second by Councillor Mayberry. Resolved, the council rise and go into closed session to consider report CS 2020-51 regarding labor relations or employee negotiations.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion's carried. Thank you, Matt. We have a motion, but unfortunately our seconder for the motion had to leave, so we'll need a new seconder. And we have it moved by Councillor Mayberry, and we need a seconder by Mark Peterson, or Councillor Peterson then.
Thank you. Thank you, Warden Martin. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Peterson. Resolved that the recommendations contained in the report Corporate Services Closed Session 2020-51 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. That brings us down to bylaws. And again, Councillor Talbot is gone, so we'll need a seconder for this motion for bylaws. Councillor Peterson again.
Thank you. Thank you, Warden Martin. Moved by Mayberry, seconded by Peterson. Resolved that the following bylaws be now read a first and second time: 6268 2020 and 6272 2020 to 6275 2020 inclusive.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the bylaws? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Bylaws, Councillor Mayberry.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded, I hope, by Councillor Peterson, that the following bylaws be now given third and final reading: 6268 2020, 6277 2020 to 6275 2020 inclusive.
Thank you. And I see Peterson, Councillor Peterson nodding his head, so he's in concurrence with that as well. So is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote then. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Just a reminder that next Wednesday morning at 9 is our next budget meeting, and it is planned from November the 18th from 9 until noon. And with that, I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Komisky. Those in favor? Carried.